The silver fork trembled between my fingers, clinking softly against the edge of the porcelain plate. My parents' house smelled like roasted chicken and rosemary, just like every Sunday night dinner since I was a child. But that night the air was different, heavy, thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break. My father's voice cracked through the silence like glass shattering on marble. "Give up the room or move out, Alina." For a heartbeat I thought I misheard him. My fork slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the plate. My mother sat beside him, hands folded too tightly, eyes avoiding mine. She didn't look like the warm, soft woman who used to braid my hair before school. She looked like a soldier standing behind the general, silently backing the strike. "What?" My voice was a whisper, but it wasn't weakness. It was the kind of whisper that comes right before a storm. My father leaned back as if this was a business meeting. "Your brother and his wife are expecting their first child. They need your room. You're 31. It's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet." My chest tightened. That room wasn't just a room. It was the only piece of my childhood that hadn't been taken from me. I'd lived there through heartbreak, college nights of insomnia, and the months I worked 3 jobs to stay afloat after my fiancé, Daniel, disappeared with half of our savings. That room had held me together. My mother cleared her throat, not meeting my eyes. "We're not throwing you out, sweetheart, but it's time you moved on." Moved on from what? My family, my history, my home. I stared at them, 2 people who had once sworn they'd never let me feel alone. And yet here they were, setting the table for my exile. Where am I supposed to go? My voice cracked this time, and I hated that it did. "You have a good job," my father said coldly. "Figure it out. We can't keep treating you like a child." The irony hit me like a slap. I'd worked myself to the bone to keep my head above water. I'd been the one paying bills when they fell behind. I was the one who postponed my own dreams so I could help my younger brother, Ethan, get through law school. And now I was being pushed out so Ethan and his perfect little wife could have the room I built my life in. The roast chicken on the table suddenly looked grotesque, like a feast thrown over someone's grave. I rose from the chair slowly, my legs trembling, not from weakness but from the weight of betrayal pressing against my bones. "You're really doing this?" I whispered. My father didn't flinch. "Yes." I looked at my mother for something, remorse, hesitation, love, but she just lowered her gaze. That hurt the most. As I walked out, the hallway smelled like the lavender my mom always sprayed. My childhood photos lined the walls. Me on a bicycle, me at graduation, me holding Ethan's hand at the park. It all looked like a story I wasn't allowed to be part of anymore. That night, I sat in my car with my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Tears blurred the windshield, the dashboard lights smearing into colors. I had no place to go, no plan, just a dull ache in my chest, but somewhere in the middle of that ache a thought took root. If they want me gone, I'll leave, but they'll remember the day they pushed me out. I wiped my tears. The ache sharpened into something else, resolve. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, something inside me was finally waking up. The real estate agent's heels clicked sharply against the marble floors of the modern house facing my parents. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, reflecting off polished oak. Every corner whispered power, independence, and everything they'd said I didn't have. $1, 2 million. The agent chirped with a rehearsed smile, "But it's worth every penny." It was madness. Just 3 nights ago, I was crying in my car, and now I was standing in the kind of house I never thought I could afford. But I had something I hadn't allowed myself to touch, the inheritance from my grandmother, money I'd vowed never to use unless it was for something that truly meant freedom. And this was freedom with a view. A view directly into my parents' backyard. As the agent walked me through the rooms, my mind wasn't just seeing walls and floors. It was seeing my father's face when he realized where I had moved. It was seeing my mother, forced to confront me from across the street. I imagined their perfect Sunday dinners with me sitting on my own terrace, raising a glass, not as their dependent daughter, but as their equal, or maybe their nightmare. But behind that fire there was fear too. What if this was reckless? What if I failed? What if this was all just a desperate reaction to pain? "Would you like to make an offer?" the agent asked. I hesitated, then looked out the massive window again. My parents' house looked smaller from this angle, almost fragile. "Yes," I said, full price. The paperwork moved faster than I expected. Within a week, my life became a blur of loan approvals, legal documents, and sleepless nights. I pushed through every doubt with the same determination that had kept me alive after Daniel's betrayal years ago. On moving day, I didn't tell a soul, not even Ethan. As the truck pulled up, the neighbors peeked through their blinds, curious about the woman who bought the most expensive house on the block. When my parents stepped outside and saw me giving directions to the movers, their faces drained of color. "Alina," my mother whispered, walking across the street. I turned, locking eyes with her. "Hi, Mom. What are you doing?" She stammered. I looked at the house, then back at her, moving. The silence between us buzzed with 1,000 unsaid words. My father joined her, his jaw tightening. "You can't be serious," he said. "Oh, I'm very serious." I smiled, a smile that wasn't sweet. "Since you wanted me to move out, I thought I'd stay close enough so you could visit whenever you want." Their silence was worth every sleepless night. That evening, I sat on my empty living room floor with a cheap pizza and a single glass of wine. My body ached, but my soul felt light. I wasn't in their house anymore. I didn't have to tiptoe around their expectations. But with freedom came the second punch: reality, bills, mortgage, maintenance, life. I had a demanding job in marketing. It paid well, but not mansion well. So I sat down with my laptop, made a brutal budget, and swore to myself, I will make this work. I won't give them the satisfaction of watching me fail. Over the following weeks, I poured myself into work. Early mornings bled into midnight deadlines. I said yes to every big project, every campaign. My boss noticed. Promotions that once seemed out of reach started sliding my way. But life wasn't a straight line. Ethan, of course, didn't stay silent. One afternoon, he showed up unannounced. "Nice house," he said, stepping into my foyer like he owned the place. "What do you want, Ethan?" I asked flatly. He gave me a pitying look. "You're being dramatic, Alina. You could have just rented a place. This is—" He waved a hand around a bit much. I leaned against the doorframe. "That's the point." His smile faltered. "Mom's worried, Dad too." I almost laughed. "Worried about me or about what people would think? Tell them not to be." I said, "I'm doing just fine." But as the door closed behind him, a shadow lingered. My parents hadn't just given me an eviction notice. They declared war on the part of me that still craved their love, and I wasn't sure which was harder, losing their approval or pretending I didn't care. Daniel, the ghost I'd buried under years of work, pain, and silent nights. My breath caught as old wounds ripped open. Daniel had left me 3 years ago, taking not just our joint savings but my trust in love. He'd vanished without a trace. Seeing that letter D was like being dragged into a nightmare I thought I'd outgrown. I typed back, hands trembling, "What do you want?" and no reply. The following days were a blur of unease. Every creak in the new house, every shadow near the windows made my heart race. But I wasn't the same woman Daniel had broken. I'd built a fortress, literally and emotionally. I filed a police report just in case. And then I did something Daniel never expected. I kept living. I poured myself into the house. Room by room, I painted walls, built shelves, hung lights. Each stroke of the brush felt like reclaiming the narrative. I was no longer the woman who begged to stay in a room in her parents' house. I was the woman who owned the house across the street. My parents pretended everything was fine, but every time we crossed paths, I saw it, the unease in their eyes. My father hated the silent reminder of my defiance. My mother tried small talk, but guilt wrapped around her like smoke. Ethan avoided looking at the house altogether, and then came the dinner invitation. "Come over this Sunday," my mother said on the phone, her voice cautious. "It's been a while." I could have said no, I almost did, but something in me wanted to see how far I'd come. Sunday night, I walked across the street in a navy blue dress. No longer a guest in my own home, no longer desperate to belong. The dinner table was the same, the roasted chicken, the rosemary, the same chairs where my heart had cracked months ago, except this time I sat taller. Ethan's wife chattered about their baby's nursery. My father avoided my gaze. My mother kept serving food like she could fix everything with an extra helping of potatoes. Finally, my father broke. "Why did you have to buy that house, Alina?" I set down my fork slowly, the same way I had the night they told me to leave, because you told me to move out. It's humiliating, he snapped. Every time I look out the window, you see me, I said softly. And that bothers you. His face flushed, but it wasn't anger, it was shame. You could have done this differently, he muttered. I leaned forward, my voice steady. No, Dad, you could have done this differently. The room fell silent. Even Ethan looked away. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I just wasn't willing to shrink anymore. That night, I walked back to my house. Daniel's text remained unanswered. My parents' guilt hung in the air, and my loneliness was still real. But so was my strength, and that strength was louder. Months passed. I built a life in that house. My career soared. I started seeing someone new, not because I needed someone, but because I finally wanted to. Daniel never showed up. He was just a whisper from the past trying to pull me back. But I'd learned, not all ghosts deserve a door to return through. One evening, I stood by my big window, watching the light flicker in my parents' house. My father was on the porch staring back. For the first time, he didn't look angry. He looked proud and maybe regretful, and I smiled. I wasn't the girl begging for a room anymore. I was the woman who bought the house across the street. The woman who rose from betrayal, built a fortress, and owned her power.